Part 27. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 262. Chapter 262. You still have some feelings for third brother, first update. What do you want to express? Li Ju couldn't understand what she was talking about. Can you be nicer to my third brother? Li Ju raised his eyebrows. Am I not good enough to him? If it had been anyone else, the one who dared to fight her and let her be her secretary would have been gone long ago, but he was still fine, which was enough to prove that she was soft-hearted. My tolerance for him has skyrocketed. Bimweo was speechless. That's not what I'm talking about. Why doesn't she understand? Seeing Li Ju's really confused look, Bimweo didn't know how to explain it to her. He could only remind her, you are an unmarried couple. It's a bit bad for you to treat your third brother like this. Li Ju didn't care much about the name unmarried couple and just chuckled, it's just fake. Fake. Chi Jinkai's posture is obvious to anyone with a discerning eye. Bimweo muttered lowly, I don't think third brother's attitude is fake. Li Ju frowned, what do you mean? What's wrong with Chi Jinkai's attitude? It's normal. Didn't you realize that he treats you differently from others? He looks at you very gently, don't you? Li Ju shook his head. Bimweo. Okay, stop guessing, Chi Jinkai and I have nothing to do with each other. Li Ju was a little tired. Why do you all think he is interested in me? He Yao, Ji Yunchu, Ji Huai, and now one more, she all thinks so. Are you kidding me? If Chi Jinkai was really interested in her, how could she not feel it? Does she think her little brother has been flirting with her all these years for nothing? When Bimweo heard this, he immediately said, look. I'm not the only one who noticed it, right? Boss, third brother is such an indifferent person, but he has become much gentler after meeting you. Normally, when they were in front of Chi Jinkai, they would often give him an indifferent look that made their scalp numb and they didn't know where to put their hands and feet. Even though she is a superpower, she still can't resist Chi Jinkai's strong aura. After meeting Li Ju, he seemed to have put away his strength, and the indifference in his eyes became much lighter. If it was the cold winter months before, now it is the warm sunshine of spring. This change can be seen by everyone. Only Li Ju was like a piece of wood, unable to sense Chi Jinkai's thoughts. Gentle, it's not much different from before. Li Ju really can't see what's so gentle about Chi Jinkai, he still talks so little, and he's very irritating. Seeing that she didn't believe it, Bimweo gave her examples one by one. Last time I went to Angkan to attend Lin's annual party, you were not used to wearing high heels, so the third brother stayed with you throughout the party to prevent you from falling. Also, you were shopping with Wei a few days ago and you were so tired that you fell asleep in the car. It was the third brother who carried you back. Besides, that day I went into the emergency room and you came to see me when I went back. The private cook he took you to, apart from important and familiar people, the third brother would not take anyone there easily. You still say that he is not gentle or special to you. Li Ju narrowed his eyes, and the more he listened, the more something was wrong. How do you know this? This is all between her and Chi Jinkai. Why does she know so well? Bimweo was stuck, with a frozen expression on his face. Of course she couldn't say that there are many people on the internet who are CP fans of the two of them. Their daily lives were photographed and posted on Super Chat. She also saw it while surfing the internet. In addition to photos showing how sweet they get along, there are also jokes and some short compositions written by fans. In addition, Chi Maoyi also told her a lot of gossip. Bimweo clenched his fist to his lips and coughed lightly, trying to hide his guilty conscience. These are not important. The important thing is that third brother's feelings for you are true. I can't bear to see you give me some reaction. When other people fall in love, they first go through the ambiguous period, confess their love, fall in love, and then get engaged, get married, etc. But it was better for the two of them to skip the previous steps and get engaged directly. It's just an engagement. The key is to complete the previous steps. If you are stuck like this, outsiders will be worried about them. What reaction am I going to give? Li Ju's words brought the problem back to the beginning. According to what you said, Qi Jinkai is interested in me, so I have to respond to him? I don't have feelings for him. Bai Muyu didn't believe it and raised his eyebrows slightly. Really? Certainly. It doesn't matter if you don't feel it, everything can be cultivated, Bai Muyu said with a smile. Moreover, Bai Muyu suddenly looked straight at Li Ju, his eyes shining with seriousness, and asked, "Boss, do you really have no feelings for the third brother?" She has known Li Ju for at least 10 years and understands her very well. According to her observation, Li Ju also treats Qi Jinkai in a special way. If you really don't have feelings for third brother, why did you flirt with him in the first place? Li Ju's mouth twitched. When she saw the handsome little brother, she subconsciously wanted to flirt with him. Okay. Besides, she didn't know it was Qi Jinkai at the time. If she had known, she would definitely not have rushed to seek death. But now, it's hard to tell. Li Ju waved his hand impatiently and changed the topic. Okay, I didn't come to your house to discuss with you whether Qi Jinkai is interesting to me. Bai Muyu said oh, but complained in his heart, he was obviously guilty of being told by her. Li Ju lowered his eyes and looked at her leg, which was still in plaster, and asked, "How is your leg?" Bai Muyu lowered his head and said, "I'm fine now. I just don't want to be suspected by my brother, so I put on a plaster to show off." The physique of a person with superpowers is dozens of times stronger than that of a normal person, and their recovery ability is particularly strong. In fact, she was already well on the day she was discharged from the hospital, just to avoid suspicion. "I'm going to Zhu in a few days. Lao Chi said that I must take one of you and my mistress with me this time." "Who do you think I should take with me?" Li Ju asked. "Going to Zhu," Bai Muyu frowned, then relaxed his eyebrows and said, "Are you finally willing to deal with the Mo family's mess?" Li Ju snorted and retorted, "When have I ever been reluctant to give up? I just don't have time." She has been busy investigating in the past few years, and she has not paid much attention to either the Mo family or the association. But fortunately, after taking her so long, she finally got some insights. Bai Muyu thought about it carefully and said, "I'd better go. After all, I also have the identity of your bodyguard in the Mo family, so it's more convenient." What he said is true, but she is like this. Bai Yuxiu is watching her all day long, and there are nannies around her. How can she get away? "What should you do over there with your brother?" Li Ju asked. Bai Muyu waved his hand, "It's okay. My brother is busy working all day and has no time to watch me. Just find someone to pretend to be me and fool him." Li Ju nodded, that was all he could do. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfei. Chapter 263. Chapter 263 Association Selection, Second Update. At this time, SR President's office. Bai Yuxiu sat across from Qi Jinkai with a relaxed posture, holding a glass of wine in his hand, watching him work with a lack of interest. The pen spun several times flexibly between the slender fingers and was placed on the table. Qi Jinkai closed the last document, his eyes were a little sour, and he stretched out his fingers and pressed his forehead. "Is everything ready in Zhu?" Qi Jinkai suddenly asked. Bai Yuxiu nodded, raised his chin slightly, took a sip of wine, the mellow aroma filled his lips and teeth, and his eyebrows relaxed a little. "Okay, I'll wait until you pass." "Well, just the day after tomorrow, you come with me." "Without King Gran?" Qi Jinkai shook his head, he has other things to be busy with in the imperial capital. "Okay, then I'll inform you." Bai Yuxiu stood up, drank all the wine in the glass, picked up the suit jacket hanging on the back of the chair and walked out. Suddenly, he stopped. "Oh, by the way, this is for you. Although I have declined, those people still sent the invitation. It's up to you." Bai Yuxiu took out a black invitation from his pocket, placed it on his table, then turned and left. Qi Jinkai propped up his chin, his eyes fell on the exquisite gold-gilded font on the invitation, and he suddenly remembered something. The main purpose of going to S continent this time is to resolve the dispute between J organization and several major families. I don't know if Li Ju will go. If the Mo family is involved, Li Ju will not ignore it, so she will definitely go. In this case, she must also know this. Qi Jinkai's eyes darkened slightly, he stretched out his slender fingers to pick up the invitation, and squinted his eyes, his thoughts making it difficult to see clearly. After a while, he simply put the invitation aside and sneered, trying to be mysterious. Li Ju took this exquisite black invitation, walked to the window, and looked at the sun for a few times, but found nothing unusual. "Who gave it to you?" "Fourth brother." He said that this selection competition was organized by the high-level government of S state together with the nobles. The purpose is to select qualified awakened people from S state. Those who are selected can obtain the qualifications to enter the association. Li Ju snorted coldly, "Qualified awakened ones? Do they think superpowers are just cabbages that can be found everywhere? Selection, selection, pretense." The last few words, her tone was full of sarcasm. "You do not say?" Bai Muo nodded in agreement. This time, they invited several major families and J organizations. Organization? Li Ju frowned. "Is Qi Jinkai going too?" Then I heard Bai Muo say, "But I heard that organization J has rejected it, saying it doesn't have time." "What about the other families?" "Of course I agree. After all, I believe they all know what the three words superpower mean. If this selection can really select a few awakened people to enter the association, they may go crazy with excitement." "Boss, are we going?" Li Ju threw the invitation on the ground casually. "I won't go, it's boring." Bai Muo was not too surprised. After all, their boss had never even been to the association's promotions. How could he watch such a small competition that was not on the stage? Even the president said that Li Ju was too proud to appear on such a small occasion because he would lose his status. Thinking of this, Bai Muo couldn't help but chuckle. Speaking of which, the state government may be here for the association's promotion this time, intending to earn enough gimmicks to attract attention before the final election. "What's the use of having a gimmick?" Li Ju sneered. "Don't they know that in the world of superpowers, weakness is the original sin? The world of superpowers is not like that of ordinary people, and methods that are useful to ordinary people may not necessarily be useful to people with superpowers. Self-marketing as a gimmick to attract attention is of no use at all. The association, whose full name is the United Association of Superpowers, conducts an annual selection to recruit newly awakened superpowers in the world. Although tens of thousands of people participate in the selection every year, only a few tenths of those are successfully selected in the end. It can be seen that the association has extremely high requirements for people with special abilities. For a person with superpowers, there are three criteria for judging his qualifications: age, purity of mental power, and level of superpowers. Age, as the name suggests, the younger you are, the more advantageous it is to awaken, because the spiritual power of children is extremely pure and it is relatively easy to cultivate. And the age of awakening is too old. Even if you enter the door of superpowers, you may not have any room to go further. The purity of mental power is the standard for judging a person's qualifications. The higher the purity, the better the qualifications, and the level of superpowers achieved in the future will be more immeasurable. The level of superpowers is a direct expression of the strength of a person with superpowers. However, one thing is that a high level of superpowers does not mean a high purity of mental power, and a person with high purity of mental power does not necessarily have a high level of superpowers. Simply put, the purity of your mental power determines your future, while your ability level shows your current abilities. The association usually considers these three aspects when selecting awakened persons, the most important of which is the purity of spiritual power. Because this is the foundation of superpowers. The purity of mental power is innate, which is what ordinary people call talent. It cannot be forced or changed. So no matter what tricks the government incontinent plays, the association will never make fun of people with special abilities. After all, this is a matter of their lives. Do they know that I don't want to pay attention to it? I'm just curious about what kind of trial they are holding blatantly, and they are not afraid of being blamed by the association, Baimwiu said thoughtfully. What are they afraid of if there are people backing them? Li Ju sneered. Baimwiu's eyes flashed and he looked at Li Ju sharply. You mean, the council? Li Ju didn't deny it. She was inseparable. Except for their group of guys who were full and had nothing to do, she couldn't think of anyone else. Interesting, interesting. Baimwiu smacked his lips, a hint of interest flashing in his eyes. The board of directors is doing such a big thing this time, and I don't know what they want to cause trouble. The president is in seclusion all year round, and most of the affairs of the association are left to the vice president. But the vice president is also a miraculous person. Unless something big happens to the association, he will not come forward at all. This resulted in the council becoming more and more arrogant and lawless. This time they are provoking Zhu to hold a selection competition. Do they really think that the association is the board of directors who can control everything? Baimwiu snorted and complained, I don't know what the president and the so-called vice president are thinking, but they allow the council to do such nonsense. Li Ju stood beside the bed, his head lowered, his expression indifferent, not knowing what he was thinking. Boss, at least we can call the president teacher, and we will count him as half of the young master of the association, so we won't care about him, Baimwiu said. Li Ju glanced at her and said in a calm and indifferent tone, let them go. The old man, the president, is very smart and will not let them go too far. Those people on the council, she simply had no interest in dealing with them. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 264. Chapter 264. The President still believes in the council. First update. I'm just afraid that the guys on the board of directors will be so full that they'll bother us. Baimwiu sighed. They shouldn't be free. Li Ju smiled and said, the strange stone was stolen from the research institute for no reason. This is considered a serious dereliction of duty by the board of directors. If they are not investigated clearly, the president will not let them go. So, those people are probably very busy right now. This is why she received the task of investigating the theft of the strange stone, but she has no intention of investigating until now. The last time she asked He Yao to monitor, she was sure that there was a spy in the council. The institute is under the jurisdiction of the council. No matter how dim-witted the old men are, the institute's protection system is at the highest level of the association. It is impossible for outsiders to sneak into the association and steal the strange stone silently. So it can only be an internal problem. The biggest problem with this problem may come from the council. The theft of the exotic stone has alarmed the president. If the council pretends to be dead, it will not be of any benefit to them. Instead, it will lose the president's trust. The best solution is to find out the culprit who stole the strange stone. She thought that although they were calm on the surface, they might have exploded privately, right? Li Ju curved her eyebrows, and a hint of smile flashed in her eyes. A bunch of rubbish. An angry voice echoed in the huge office. Several people dressed in black stood in a row respectfully, lowering their heads to listen to the reprimand of the man in front of them. The man is also dressed in black, but the difference is that the inside of his collar is embroidered with silver dark patterns, his eyes are sharp and cold, and his eyebrows are dyed with a violent look. With a sullen face and a huge anger suppressed in his eyes, he swept the documents on the table to the ground with a crisp sound. "What's the use of you? I haven't been able to find anyone for so long." The necks of the group of people he scolded trembled. When the person in front of them looked at them, they felt as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake, and fear surged in their hearts unconsciously. "Han, Director Han, we tried our best." One of the men in black mustered up his courage, raised his head and said weakly. "Try your best." Han Ruohwa sneered, with a cold light in his eyes, "I found just such a small amount of things, why do you have the nerve to say I'll do my best? Do I usually feed you?" A group of people turned pale and lowered their heads, daring not to answer. Han Ruohwa got angry when he saw their submissive and useless looks. He pointed towards the door and said in a cold voice, "Get out! Get out of here!" When everyone heard this, they didn't dare to stay any longer and hurriedly left. Han Ruohwa fell back on the chair, his fingers trembling with anger, and he pressed his forehead. "Director Han, what's wrong with you?" An old man with a stooped back pushed open the door, followed by a young woman. The old man looked at the backs of the group of men in black leaving, and asked with some confusion. Han Ruohwa said, "Those losers can't do anything well, they should be scolded." After finishing speaking, the young woman following behind the old man chuckled, her green eyes curved, and her deep three-dimensional facial features became more beautiful and attractive. She said, "Why is Director Han so angry?" Just now, the old man walked in first, blocking his view. It wasn't until she spoke that Han Ruohwa suddenly noticed her, his expression suddenly changed, a smile appeared on his lips, and he said, "Miss Mia, why are you here?" Mia curled up her red lips, looked at him with her green eyes, and her eyes were seductive, making people fall in love with her every frown and smile. "I heard that Director Han is also investigating the theft of exotic stones recently." Han Ruohwa's expression changed a few times after hearing the words theft of exotic stones, and then returned to normal, sneering, "Yes, after all, the institute I have always been in charge, but if something goes wrong this time, I can't bear the blame." Mia stretched out her slender white fingers, hooked a strand of her long golden hair and circled it on her fingertips. Her blue eyes were shining brightly, and she said with a smile, "Director Han, don't blame yourself, the president has already taken care of this. The matter is left to Zhu Shen to investigate with full authority, and I believe there will be a result soon." Hearing what she said, the expressions of the old man and Han Ruohwa suddenly became very subtle, and their eyes flashed with complicated emotions. Upon seeing this, Mia covered her lips and smiled softly, and asked, "What's wrong? Did I say something wrong?" "Oh, no," Han Ruohwa said. Even though he said this, there was still something wrong with his expression. Mia's eyes flashed slightly, as if she had seen through what he was thinking, and smiled, "I know what Director Han is worried about. Don't worry, the president has known your abilities and sincerity for so many years." Han Ruohwa laughed dryly, "That's perfect. Relax," the president said. "If you really feel sorry for yourself, you can help the 9 gods investigate together." Han Ruohwa suddenly raised his head and asked suspiciously, "Really?" Mia nodded with a smile. "Nature." At this time, the old man who had been standing aside suddenly said, "It seems that the president is still willing to believe in the council." Mia looked sideways at him and said, "What did Mr. Sun say?" "The council was established by the president. How can you not believe it?" "I am just telling Director Han on behalf of the president today that he will not lose trust in the board of directors because of the Yishi incident. Please rest assured." Hanruohwa and Mr. Sun looked at each other and smiled the next moment. Good. After delivering the message for the president, Mia no longer stayed here and turned around to leave. Hanruohwa looked at her back, narrowed his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "What do you mean by president?" Sun Lao hummed, "He wants to stabilize us. At any rate, I have been with the president for decades and understand his thoughts very well. This time the exotic stone was stolen, the entire association was shocked. The people below were talking about it, and the target of the discussion was their council. Many people are speculating that there is a mole in the council, that is, the mole stole the strange stone, and the directors of the council are also suspected of helping to cover it up. If the rumors are allowed to spread, it will definitely arouse the dissatisfaction of the council. Naturally, the president is not willing to see such a scene. So I had to ask Mia to deliver the message. The purpose was to give them a shot in the arm and make them feel at ease." "You're really cunning," Hanruohwa smiled sarcastically. "Okay, leave him alone. The most important thing now is to find out who stole the strange stone." Mr. Sun had a dark face, grinding his back molars fiercely, and squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. What he is most concerned about now is who can steal the strange stone under the nose of their entire council. Even if the relationship between the board of directors and the president is tense, it does not mean that they have to go against the association. You must know that strange stones are not ordinary things. It can turn an ordinary person into a superpower, a treasure that contains powerful spiritual power. If it fell into the hands of others, it would be more than a little trouble. Although the strange stone was successfully brought back this time, the nature of this incident is still very serious. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Anfei. Chapter 265. Chapter 265. You have been single for a long time. Second update. Mia came out of Hanruohwa's office, stepped on high heels, and walked out of the base's gate elegantly step by step, and came to a manor behind the base. There are various precious flowers and plants planted in the manor, all of which are well taken care of. Mia walked through the flower field and came to a place full of tulips. She respectfully faced the old man who was squatting in front of him. Wearing a straw hat, he carefully loosened the soil for the flowers little by little. He bent over and said, "President, I have conveyed your words to Hanruohwa." The old man held up the brim of his hat, changed his shovel, and continued to loosen the soil. Without raising his head, he asked, "How is Xiaju doing there?" "Well." Mia bit her lip lightly and said hesitantly, "She hasn't heard from her for a long time. Ever since the president gave her the task of investigating the theft of the strange stone, apart from sending the strange stone back, no news has been sent back." The old man smiled and said, "She doesn't want to care anymore." Mia frowned and asked, "Then let's." The old man put down the shovel, patted the soil on his hands, and said with a hint of smile in his old voice, "Let her go." "Yes." After Li Ju came out of the Bai family's old house, he drove directly to Ji Yunchu's clinic. Although Bai Muo said it easily, her sequelae could not be ignored. She decided to ask Ji Yunchu carefully and make arrangements for her trip to S-State. Unexpectedly, after arriving at the clinic, Li Ju witnessed a good show with his own eyes. She parked on the street opposite Ji Yunchu clinic, with the car window rolled down and her arms resting on the window frame, with interest flashing in her eyes. There was a luxury car parked in front of the clinic, and a middle-aged man and woman stood in front of the car. They were both wearing expensive designer brands, and they obviously had a lot of background. Opposite them was Ji Yunchu, who was looking at the person in front of her impatiently. According to her understanding of Ji Yunchu, every time she shows this expression, it means someone is going to be unlucky. Li Ju curled her lips and looked at them quietly. "Ah Shu, look what you look like now." The middle-aged woman looked at Ji Yunchu arrogantly with a bit of meanness on her face that could not be concealed even by delicate makeup. I told you that there is no benefit to following your father, why don't you listen? I thought that after Ji Yunchu's mother died, she was determined to leave with her father, leave the Yun family, and disappear for more than 10 years. Unexpectedly, when we met again, she actually opened such a shabby clinic in imperial capital. Ji Yunchu said coldly, it's none of your business. When the middle-aged woman heard this, she became angry and said angrily, do you know how to be polite? I'm your aunt. She is indeed a wild girl who hangs out outside, and does not look like a rich and wealthy daughter. Ji Yunchu laughed sarcastically, sorry, I didn't have a mother since I was a child, so no one asked me to be polite. You. The middle-aged woman was angry and pointed at Ji Yunchu. She wanted to rush forward and slap her, but was stopped by the man next to her. Yin, don't be like this, she is your niece after all. The man leaned over and whispered in his ear, don't forget the purpose of our coming here. Yin glanced at him, calmed down again, put on a smiling face, and said, Yunshu, you see what's so good about running this shabby clinic, why not join our Yun family? Your grandpa misses you. The man also echoed, yes, yes. Ji Yunshu watched the two of them singing in harmony coldly, and said without mercy, does he miss me, or my heart? The expressions of the two people suddenly froze. Yin smiled stiffly and said awkwardly, Yunshu, what are you talking about? Of course your grandpa misses you as his granddaughter. However, Ji Yunshu didn't really want to talk nonsense with them, so he took a step back and closed the door directly. Yin suddenly turned red with anger and spat, this girl. As she said that, she was so angry that she wanted to kick the door in, but was stopped again. Yin, calm down, Yunshu has been gone for so many years, and she must be resentful towards the Yun family and us. Let's come back another day, the man advised. Although Yin was unwilling to give in, when she thought of her own purpose, she did not dare to act recklessly. She could only bite her lip and nodded. The two of them did not linger in front of the clinic, they got in the car and left directly. Li Ju watched their car go away before entering the clinic. Who were those people just now? Ji Yunshu was making coffee for himself. He was not surprised when he heard her voice. He had just seen her car parked on the roadside at the door. My old acquaintances have mentioned it to you. Li Ju nodded and said in a calm tone, oh, is it the person who wants your heart as you said before? Ji Yunshu hummed, turned around, walked over with coffee, and handed her a cup. Li Ju took the coffee, took a sip, and asked, how did you find this place? I met Lu Qingran when your brother and I had dinner last time he had met my mother. And she looks somewhat similar to her mother, so it's not surprising that he can guess her identity. She was surprised that the Yun family came to her door so quickly, and judging from the expressions on the Yun and his wife's faces, they were afraid that their precious daughter's body had reached its limit. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so eager to get her back. It's just, they still treat her as a little girl who had no power to resist more than 10 years ago. Are they too naive? Ji Yunshu took a sip of coffee, with a heart-stopping smile on his lips. Suddenly, her eyelashes trembled, and she frowned at the coffee in the cup, why is it so bitter? She clearly used the coffee machine according to the instructions in the book. Why is the coffee made so bitter? Li Ju raised his eyebrows, is it bitter? I don't think so. Ji Yunshu rolled his eyes, of course you can't taste it if you don't have a sense of taste. With that said, she took away the coffee from Li Ju's hand, stop drinking it, it tastes too bad, so just throw it away. Although Li Ju has no sense of taste, this is her first time making coffee by herself. There is no guarantee that something will happen if she drinks it, so she should be cautious. Li Ju pouted and said, I think they will come again. What are you going to do? Ji Yunshu said simply and rudely, fight him out. What if they pester you like flies, aren't you bothered? According to what she saw just now, that couple was probably very attached to Ji Yunshu. If Ji Yunshu doesn't return to the Yoon family, they will definitely use other methods. Those methods are of no use to Ji Yunshu, but they are disgusting. Then what do you think we should do? Lee Ju raised her eyebrows, slightly raised her lips, and smiled. Why don't you move into my house? Ji Yunshu decisively refused. Impossible. Why? Without a reason, the impossible is impossible. How could she go to live at Lee's house? You moved to our house, it's convenient for my grandpa to take a medical check. Your old man is in good health and has no need of me. Just in case, old man, Lee Ju said. Ji Yunshu narrowed his eyes and said, Ajiu, I think you just want to bring me and your eldest brother together. If you could put this energy into yourself and Mr. Chi, you would have been single long ago. Ji Yunshu hits the nail on the head. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 266. Chapter 266 Lu Qingran, I'm here to apologize. First update. Li Ju chuckled, if you don't want to go, I won't go. She looked around and saw that she was the only one in the clinic, so she asked, where are your junior brothers and sisters? Go to school. Li Ju nodded, just in time, I need your help with something. Lao Lu suffered from sequelae some time ago, please take a look when you have time. After finishing speaking, Ji Yunshu's expression changed. Why didn't she tell me? She can hide this kind of thing, she is really messy. It's no joke if your mental power is leaked. Li Ju sighed, she felt it was within control, so she didn't tell anyone else. Ji Yunshu said with a cold face, what does she think? She thinks she is a doctor? It's just nonsense. After saying that, she looked at Li Ju again, her eyes slightly opened, and said angrily, you two are disobedient, do you believe I can stop you from messing around with me? Looking at her substantial gaze, Li Ju touched her nose and felt a little guilty, what are you looking at me for if I don't obey you? Didn't you start it? Ji Yunshu got angrier the more she thought about it. If Baimweo was willing to listen to her and not run around, how could there be any sequelae now? And Li Ju, who is still acting recklessly even though she knows her physical condition, do you really think that she is a ghost doctor with a good temper? Li Ju glanced at her face and paused. He felt that if he told her now that he was going to estate the day after tomorrow, she would probably get angry. Thinking that Ji Yunshu might go crazy, Li Ju coughed lightly and decided to hide it from her first. After telling her that Baimweo wanted to apply for blocking treatment and asking her to pay more attention to Baimweo, Li Ju left. During this period, he didn't say anything related to going to Continent S. If she knew about it, she would definitely do everything possible to stop it. It would be better to just kill it first and then tell her later. After sending Li Ju away, Ji Yunshu was about to close the door when a red Rolls-Royce stopped steadily in front of the clinic. A trace of doubt flashed in Ji Yunshu's eyes. Today is the weekend and the clinic is not accepting patients. Who is this? The car door opened, and what caught the eye was the tall and well-proportioned legs. His eyes gradually moved upward, and finally fell on Lu Qingran's charming face. Young Master Lu. Ji Yunshu's eyes flashed with surprise. Why did Lu Qingran come here? Lu Qingran stood there, looking at Ji Yunshu, who looked surprised, and laughed a few times. Inviting the person in, Ji Yunshu poured him a cup of coffee. I wonder what Mr. Lu has to do when he comes to my place. Lu Qingran took the coffee with a slightly weird expression. He subconsciously tightened his hands and lowered his head, his eyes unclear. I'm here to apologize to you. Ji Yunshu raised his eyebrows. Apologize. She had only met him once before when she came to the imperial capital. What was he apologizing for? Lu Qingran hesitated for a moment, raised his eyes to glance at her, then quickly lowered his head and said hesitantly, I suspected that you were Aunt Yun's daughter after I saw you last time, so I went to Yun's house to confirm, but I didn't expect. He paused for a moment, scratched his head in embarrassment, and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I've caused you trouble too. Ji Yunchu understood that it was because of this. No wonder she had been in the imperial capital for a few months before the Yun family came to her door, and the trouble lasted for a long time because of him. The Yun family didn't come to see you, right? Lu Qingran asked. His expression was still very guilty. If it weren't for his temporary curiosity, the Yun family would not have known about Ji Yunchu's return. I've already looked for it, Ji Yunchu said truthfully. Moreover, he arrived right after the Yun family left. What? Lu Qingran's eyes widened in shock, and then she frowned and her face turned ugly. I didn't expect them to be so shameless. As soon as he left the Yun family, they found Ji Yunchu immediately. How impatient is this? If it weren't for the fact that he needed to confirm his inner guess, he wouldn't have gone to Yun's house. He didn't expect the Yun family to be so sensitive. He just asked a few indirect questions, but they were able to guess it and even found Ji Yunchu's clinic. Ji Yunchu laughed sarcastically. They have become shameless for a day or two, but Mr. Lu, since you know the virtues of the Yun family, you still go to inquire about me. Is it possible that you did it on purpose? She looked at Lu Qingran with a half smile, a hint of interest in her eyes. Upon hearing this, Lu Qingran quickly shook her head and explained, no. I just think that if you are really Aunt Yun's child, the Yun family might know something about it. Then you are right, the Yun family knows me very well. Ji Yunchu emphasized the last few words, sounding like self-deprecation. After all, she has been Yun Rong's backup heart since she was a child. Lu Qingran frowned even more when he heard this. I'm really sorry. I didn't think about it. I will help you deal with the Yun family. Ji Yunchu chuckled, no need, people like them won't have any impact on me. I'm just worried that they will attack you. Lu Qingran felt a little uneasy. As far as he knew, Yun Rong's condition was particularly bad. Now the Yun family has used almost all its resources to find a matching heart for heart transplant surgery, but unfortunately they haven't found one yet. And Ji Yunchu, the spare heart who once escaped from the Yun family, appeared in the imperial capital at this time. He was really worried that the Yun family would jump over the wall to take advantage of him. After all, they did something like this once 20 years ago. Lu Qingran was full of worries, but Ji Yunchu, the person involved, didn't really care. She is no longer the little girl who was unable to resist. If the Yun family really wants to kill her, don't blame her for sending Yun Rong to the west in advance. Before that, she could just collect some of the original interest. Thinking about it like this, she couldn't wait for the Yun family to come. Ji Yunchu's lips raised a heart-stopping smile. Young Master Lu, don't worry too much, I have my own way to deal with the Yun family. Why am I not worried? After all, it is me who has caused you trouble. Lu Qingran lowered her eyes, looking remorseful. You just miss my mother, I understand, Ji Yunchu said. Hearing this, Lu Qingran sighed, I'm ashamed, Aunt Yun asked me to save you, but in the end you ran out on your own. Had he been faster, maybe the outcome would have been better. Isn't that great? I left with my father, and the Yun family has not found us for so many years. But Lu Qingran looked at Ji Yunchu, and for some reason, he suddenly swallowed the words on his lips and could only sigh and shake his head. It would definitely not be a good experience for the father and daughter to leave their hometown and work outside. This time when I returned to the imperial capital, I was troubled by the Yun family again. Oh, I forgot to ask, how is uncle these years? Lu Qingran suddenly asked. He and Ji Yunchu were less than 10 years old when Ji Yunchu's mother had an accident, so her memory of her father was somewhat vague and she couldn't remember his appearance. He has passed away, Ji Yunchu said calmly. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Faye. Chapter 267. Chapter 267 Ji Yuncha's past, second update. Lu Qingran was stunned suddenly, not expecting this answer at all. I'm sorry for bringing up your sadness. Fine. Ji Yuncha didn't react much. Her father had been dead for many years. After such a long time, her mentality had become calm and there would be no more disturbances caused by this incident. But seeing that Lu Qingran was still brooding about this matter, Ji Yuncha comforted him, "Young Master Lu, you don't have to blame yourself for what happened back then. You don't owe me anything. Besides, you did your best at that time." However, in the end he failed to find help, and her mother eventually died on the operating table. Lu Qingran sighed, "If I could do it all over again, I would never let tragedy happen." Ji Yuncha chuckled lightly, "Unfortunately, there is no if." Lu Qingran was silent. After a long time, he suddenly asked, "What is your relationship with Tingzi?" Hearing his familiar tone, Ji Yuncha couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Are you familiar with him?" Lu Qingran chuckled, "We've been playing together since childhood, but that guy has become more and more disabled as he grows older, and his temperament has become cold and cold, like a piece of wood." Speaking of Li Tingzi, Lu Qingran immediately made all sorts of complaints. Ji Yuncha chuckled. It seemed that they were really familiar with each other. So many points of complaint could not be made in a day or two. But, although he is a bit cold-tempered and his emotional intelligence is basically negative, he is a good person and is worthy of trust. As he spoke, Lu Qingran blinked at her, his eyes full of hints. Ji Yunchu almost choked. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious, you and he are very suitable together, but there is one disadvantage. His job is very dangerous and accidents are easy to happen." Ji Yuncha pretended that he didn't understand what he was talking about. "Do you have anything else? If not, just leave. I'm still busy." Seeing that he wanted to tell him some of the benefits of being with Li Tingzi, Ji Yuncha started to chase them away without hesitation and with an expressionless face. Lu Qingran glanced at the time and remembered that she still had something to do, so she had to say, "Okay, I'll leave first." After saying that, he stood up and left. Before leaving, he did not forget to throw down a business card and said, "If you need anything, just call me." Ji Yuncha's eyes suddenly twitched, and he looked at the gold-gilded business card in his hand speechlessly. Why did this guy make his business card so showy? However, after thinking about it, Ji Yuncha put up the business card and looked at Lu Qingran's back as he drove away. He didn't know what he thought of and suddenly laughed. Her mother is the youngest daughter of the head of the Yun family. Because she was not born into the royal family, she has been bullied by the Yun family. Her father was an ordinary doctor and he didn't mind her mother's background. They had her not long after they got married. Although my mother is not popular in the Yun family, because my father's income is not bad, their family's life is not very bad. Unfortunately, after the birth of Yun Rong, the real eldest daughter of the Yun family, her mother's biological sister, the peace of their family was completely broken. Yun Rong has had a rare heart disease since birth, and there is no other better way except transplantation. Yun Yin panicked. How could a mother watch her daughter die? So she started looking for a suitable heart. In the end, for some reason, it actually found her head. It's ironic that she, Yun Rong's cousin, has a heart that matches hers. Yun Yin was so happy about this result that she wanted her to transplant a heart to Yun Rong, so that Yun Rong would not have to suffer. When Yun Yin made this request, she was undoubtedly slapped a few times by her mother and kicked out of the house. It is rare for a person to be so selfish and shameless. Your daughter has a heart problem, why should she risk her life to save it? Who does Yun Yin think she is? Can God, who is above us, Control other people's lives at any time? How ridiculous. It is impossible for her mother to agree, but Yunyan seems to be crazy. She has been secretly coveting her heart, and the rest of the Yun family, including Mr. Yun, know this. But none of them spoke out against Yunyan's idea. The Yun family is a big family, with a history of more than 100 years. Every generation of the Yun family has been doing business for generations, and they have become the richest plutocrats. However, for some unknown reason, in the generation of Mr. Yun, the Yun family has gradually declined. Despite this, the Yun family still retains some of the rules and concepts of their ancestors. For example, bloodline. They believed that her mother was born from a mistress and had impure blood. Naturally, no one would speak for her, and no one would tell her Yunyan's plan. Yunyan is obviously crazy. She will do almost anything for Yun wrong. That day, Yunyan kidnapped her mother while she was not at home, intending to send her directly to the operating table. Unexpectedly, her mother suddenly came back and discovered Yunyan's intentions, so she ran away with her. But where can I run to? It is impossible to call the police. There are many spies of the Yun family in the police station. I am afraid that they will be arrested by the Yun family before they arrive at the police station. At this time, while they were escaping, they met Lu Qingran, who was lost because of fun on the street. My mother once met Lu Qingran at a banquet. She knew that he was the eldest son of Lu and knew that he could save them, so she asked him to go back to the Lu family to find someone to help. Even anyone can do it, as long as he can help them. Although it is unrealistic to ask a child under 10 years old to seek help, it can only be used as a doctor. However, in the end they failed to recruit reinforcements, and the Yun family captured them back. In order to save her, her mother resisted desperately. In the end, during the dispute, her artery was accidentally cut with a scalpel, and she died of excessive blood loss. As for the Yun family, they all stood aside indifferently and watched all this happen. No one wanted to save their mother. At that time, she didn't know where the strength came from, broke free, ran all the way to the street, and finally escaped by sneaking into the subway. Later on, she wandered around the streets in a daze. If she hadn't met her father's colleagues, she might have starved to death on the streets. My father, who had just returned from a business trip, was greatly shocked when he heard the bad news that his mother had died. He rushed into Yun's house like crazy, only to have his legs broken and thrown out. After that, she left the imperial capital with her father. Shortly after, her father passed away, and she was picked up and adopted by her master, where she remains today. To be honest, after so many years, she has already had the ability to make the Yun family pay the price, but once she failed to avenge her parents, it was not that she stopped hating and gave up. But I don't want to let the Yun family go so cheaply. She planned to torture everyone in the Yun family slowly, bit by bit, so that they could taste despair. But when Yunyan and his wife came to the door, for a moment, Ji Yuncha really thought about strangling them to death. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfei. Chapter 268. Chapter 268. Why should she? First update. More than 20 years have passed since the incident, but the hatred has not subsided at all, but has become even stronger. Ji Yuncha drank the coffee in the cup in one gulp and lowered his eyes to hide the haze in his eyes. Originally, her main mission in coming to the imperial capital was to assist Li Ju, but now that the group of people jumped in front of her, don't blame her for dealing with them first. At the alley near the clinic, Lu Qingran stopped the car, put one hand on the steering wheel, and pressed the Bluetooth on his ear, his eyes dark and gloomy. How many times have I told you not to disturb her? Did you turn a deaf ear to what labor and management said? After saying a few words, Lu Qingran's expression suddenly became ferocious. I don't care, I'll just leave it here today, Ji Yunchu, I'm covering you up. If you dare to disturb her again, I'll skin you. After saying that, regardless of the other party's reaction, he took off the Bluetooth, threw it on the passenger seat, and drove away. Yoon Ma-choo stared at the screen of the hung-up phone with a gloomy face, his eyes darkening slightly. At this time, there was a knock on the door, and the housekeeper pushed the door open and entered. "Master, my wife asked you to go to the hospital, saying that the lady is awake." "I see. Yunchi Private Hospital, VIP ward." When Yoon Ma-choo arrived, the rest of the Yoon family were there. Yoon Yin and his wife are sitting by the bed and talking to Yoon Rong. Judging from their expressions, they should be asking about their physical condition. Mr. Yoon was sitting on the sofa beside him. His eyes were sunken and his eyes were sunken. He looked not in good spirits, but his eyes were sharp. Everyone heard the movement and turned their eyes to him in unison. Yoon Rong had just woken up, her face was slightly pale, her skin was almost transparent, and the blood vessels on her neck were clearly visible. When she saw Yoon Ma-choo, her eyes lit up slightly and she said happily, "Brother, you are here." Yoon Ma-choo hummed slightly and didn't react much to the excitement in her eyes. Yoon Yin frowned and said, "Aishu, what's your attitude? Your sister is calling you." As soon as she said these words, Yoon Ma-choo's eyes suddenly darkened, and the anger he had suppressed because of Lu Qinggran's words immediately came up. "What's my attitude, Mom? Why don't you first think about what good things you have done?" The tone of his words was so serious that Yoon Yin was so shocked that she didn't react and was stunned on the spot. Mr. Yoon frowned in displeasure and said in a deep voice, "Aishu, why are you talking to your mother?" Chu Huiguang, who was accompanying his wife and daughter, also said, "It's Achu, apologize quickly." Yoon Ma-choo realized that he had lost his composure after saying that, and clenched his fists to calm down. He coughed lightly and said, "Mom, I'm sorry, I sounded a little harsh." Yoon Rong looked at his obviously worried expression and couldn't help but asked worriedly, "Brother, what happened?" Yoon Ma-choo didn't say anything, but looking at his expression, you could tell he was acquiescing. Now Yoon Yin also reacted and asked quickly, "What happened, Achu?" Yoon Ma-choo raised his head and took a deep look at her. The look in his eyes made the latter's eyelids twitch, giving her a bad premonition. As expected, Yoon Ma-choo paused and asked, "Mom, are you looking for Ji Yunchu?" Yoon Yin's face stiffened and her eyes changed. "Ji Yunchu?" Yoon Rong's eyes flashed when he heard the name, and he suddenly wondered, "Brother, are you talking about Sister Yunshu? Isn't she dead?" She turned to look at Yoon Yin again. "Mom, didn't you say she was hit by a car and died?" However, Yoon Yin lowered her head and remained silent for a rare moment. Not only her, but also Chu Huiguang and Mr. Yoon did not speak. What the is going on? Yoon Rong was completely confused by their reaction. After a long while, Chu Huiguang finally couldn't help but say, Wrong, actually Yunshu was not hit by a car and died that year." Yoon Rong frowned, her eyes sparkling with water, puzzled, then why has she not been with the Yoon family all these years? Yoon Ma-choo glanced at her and said coldly, "That's because your parents and grandpa discovered that her heart matched yours very well, so they wanted to use her heart to save you." Upon hearing this, Yoon Rong's face immediately turned paler. Use her heart." Yoon Yin saw her frightened expression and couldn't help but turn around and glare at Yoon Ma-choo, her eyes implying a warning. Yoon Rong has just woken up and his mental state is extremely unstable. How could he listen to such things? Wrong, don't be afraid. You don't have to worry about these things. Mom will definitely find a way to save you, Yoon Yin said in a comforting tone. Yoon Ma-choo's face became even colder. Save? How to save? Do you think Ji Yunshu is still the little girl who was at your mercy? Seeing him contradicting her again and again, Yoon Yin, no matter how good-tempered she was, became sullen and said angrily, "Achu. Do you mean to protect that dead girl Ji Yunshu?" What about your sister? I'm not trying to protect her, but you can't touch her yet. Yunyan became anxious when she heard this. Why can't she move? Is it possible that she still has some support? However, Yun Ma Chu let out a sneer, his eyes darkening. You're right, she has a backer, and we can't afford to offend her. As he spoke, he took out his mobile phone from his pocket and showed them the chat history. Lu Qingran warned me when you knew Ji Yunchu came to the imperial capital just now. You went to see Ji Yunchu, and he immediately called and warned me again not to provoke her. At this time, not only Yun Yin, but also Chu Huaiguang and Mr. Yun looked at the mobile phone in his hand with shocked expressions. Yun Yin muttered in disbelief, how is this possible? How could that dead girl? Yun Ma Chu said very speechlessly, so mom, I beg you, can you calm down for a while first? No. Yun Yin looked sharply and rejected him. What about Rong Rong's heart? She can't wait any longer. Yun Yin held Yun Rong's hand, her eyes gradually turned reddish. Aishu, this is your biological sister, how could I watch her die? So, no matter what, the best way now is to use Ji Yunchu's heart to save Yun Rong. All of this was destined. When Yun Rong's condition worsened, Ji Yunchu appeared in the imperial capital. Isn't this an opportunity given to the Yun family by God? In this case, how could she not cherish it? Yun Ma Chu couldn't bear it any longer, and finally roared loudly, then have you ever considered the Yun family? Lu Qingran said that if we continue to have evil thoughts about Ji Yunchu, he will make the Yun family miserable. Here we go. Then the entire Yun family will have to play with her. Yun Ma Chu stretched out his hand and pointed at the delicate Yun Rong on the hospital bed. Yun Rong's face suddenly turned pale, her fingers clenched tightly on the sheets, her teeth bit her lower lip, and her eyes had unclear emotions. Yun Yin was completely stunned. How come? Lu Qingran, how could Lu Qingran do this for Ji Yunchu? Why should she? End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfei. Chapter 269. Chapter 269 It's better to invite a ghost doctor, second update. Mr. Yun also said in a serious voice, if what Aishu said is true, it's better to be careful. What are you being careful about? Dad, Rong Rong's body can't wait any longer. Yun Yin was anxious, her tone a little excited. You have heard what the doctor just said, we really can't delay it any longer now, the only hope is to have her and Ji Yunchu change their hearts quickly. Mr. Yun was silent. What she said did make sense. Yun Rong's condition has become serious enough that he can no longer delay, and currently he has used all the power of the Yun family to search all over the black market, but he doesn't have the heart to match Yun Rong at all. Only Ji Yunchu. Mr. Yun narrowed his eyes. Dad, don't hesitate, the first priority is to capture that girl first. No, Yun Ma Chu objected with an ugly face, Lu Qingran won't let us go. Yun Yin's expression was a bit desperate, I can't control that much, I don't believe that the Lu family would really break up with us over Ji Yunchu. After speaking, she glanced at the silent Chu Huaiguang for support, do you think so? Huh? Oh, that's right, Chu Huaiguang said vaguely. Mr. Yun's eyes flickered uncertainly, as if he was thinking about the feasibility of this matter. At this moment, Yun Rong, who had been silent on the hospital bed and acted as a background, suddenly said, Mom, Grandpa, if you are in trouble, forget it. Why is this so difficult? Rong, don't worry, Mom will definitely make you healthy. Yun Yin looked at Yun Rong lovingly, her eyes very firm. Mr. Yun also said, Rong, don't worry, Grandpa will do his best to cure you. But Yun Rong bit her lip, glanced at Yun Ma Chu secretly, and found that his face was very gloomy. Brother, didn't he say? Yun Yin interrupted her, leave him alone, your brother is always timid in doing things. Hearing this, Yun Ma Chu's fists hanging by his sides clenched unconsciously, and his eyes became darker. Is he timid in doing things? She really dares to say it? In today's Yun family, my grandfather is old and my father is unable to support himself. Isn't he taking care of everything in the company and at home? How could they have such a life if it weren't for him? It is true that Yun Rong is his biological sister, but he will not offend Lu Qinggran or the Lu family because of her. That will not do any good to the Yun family. Although he didn't get along with Lu Qinggran for a long time, he also knew that although he seemed a bit casual and wanton at ordinary times, once he got serious, his methods were even better than his. It can be seen that the consequences of angering Lu Qinggran are not something he can bear. But now, his good mother and grandfather actually ignored Lu Qinggran's warning and wanted to take action against Ji Yunchu. Wouldn't that be a blatant slap in his face? Mom, are you sure you want to offend the Lu family? Yun Ma Chu took a deep breath and asked for the last time. Yun Yin frowned and said, Ah Chu, even if Lu Qinggran wants to help that dead girl, he cannot represent the Lu family. The Lu family will not break up with us now. What's more, if Lu Qinggran's meaning really represents the Lu family's meaning, they won't be afraid. They are just relying on the Qi family, there is nothing to be afraid of. However, she forgot one thing. In the past, the Lu family did rely on the Qi family for support. However, in recent decades, the Lu family's power has begun to gradually expand, and its industry has also opened up overseas markets. Now in the imperial capital, no one can despise the Lu family. Home. Yun Yin's understanding of the Lu family was obviously still a long time ago. But it's no wonder, after all, since Yun Rong was born, she basically spent most of her time with her, so naturally she didn't have free time to care about this. Yun Ma Chu sneered, whatever you want. If Lu Qinggran is really angry by then, don't blame him for not reminding them. Instead of arguing with them here, it is better to go back and think carefully about how to deal with it. He didn't want to stay here for a moment. Yun Ma Chu pushed open the door and walked out, but unexpectedly bumped into someone. Leng Ming was holding a fruit basket in her right hand and looked at Yun Ma Chu walking out of the ward in a daze, her expression extremely gloomy. Yun, brother Yun. Yun Ma Chu glanced at her, ignored her, and walked directly past her. Leng Ming was left alone and confused. She opened the door with a smile on her face and said, Grandpa Yun, Aunt Yun, Uncle Chu, and Rong Rong, I'm here to see you. When Yun Yin saw Leng Ming, she immediately smiled and frowned, her eyes softening, it's Ming Ming here. Yes, I'm free today, so I came to see Rong Rong. As she spoke, she blinked at Yun Rong, who chuckled, and his pale face looked better. By the way, I just saw brother Yun walking out with a sullen face. Did something happen? She originally asked casually, but she saw that everyone present had strange expressions and remained silent. Leng Ming thought she had said something wrong and cautiously asked, what's wrong? Nothing. Yun Yin smiled and changed the subject. She didn't want others to know too much about Ji Yunchu. After all, it was a disgraceful matter. If one more person knew about it, it would be more dangerous. Even if that person is Yun Rong's best friend. How is Rong Rong's condition? Seeing that the Yun family didn't want to say anything, Leng Ming stopped asking. He just sat next to Yun Rong, held her hand, and asked worriedly. It's not very good. The doctor said that a heart transplant must be done as soon as possible, and even if it is transplanted, the success rate is not very high. Yun Yin looked very sad. She was worried that even with Ji Yunchu's heart, the operation would still fail. If something happens to Yun Rong, how will she survive? Suddenly, Leng Ming said abruptly, I heard from a friend abroad that there is a ghost doctor who is very skilled in medicine. He claims that there is no disease that she can't cure. Why don't you ask Aunt Yun to try to see if he can cure Rong Rong? As soon as these words came out, Yun Yin's eyes lit up and disbelief flashed in her eyes. Are you telling the truth? Leng Ming nodded, however, This ghost doctor has a very weird temperament and whereabouts. Almost no one knows about her. People who ask her to treat illnesses mostly place orders online. Mr. Yoon squinted his eyes and asked, "Is this ghost doctor really that good at healing?" "Well, that's right," Len Ming said, "she is famous abroad, and heads of several countries are vying to ask her to treat her illness. If we can ask him to treat her, Rong should be saved." Yoon simply couldn't suppress her inner excitement. "That's right. As long as you ask a ghost doctor to operate on Rong, it will definitely be successful." Coupled with Ji Yuncha's heart, Rong can act like a normal person. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy Enfe. Chapter 270. Chapter 270 Wiping Hair, First Update. Ming, do you know how to contact the ghost doctor? After learning that Yoon Rong was saved, Yoon's eyes burst out with hope, and she couldn't contain the joy and excitement in her heart. Len Ming smiled slightly and said, "I have a friend who knows a website where you can post fees and ask ghost doctors to take orders. Although ghost doctors usually take orders based on their mood, it is worth a try." Okay, no problem." Mr. Yoon also stood up at this time and thanked Len Ming solemnly. "Len Ming, the Yoon family owes you a big favor this time." Len Ming shook his head, turned to look at Yoon Rong on the hospital bed, and said, "It's all for Rong. I also hope she can get well soon." Hearing this, Yoon Rong also raised the corners of his mouth happily. Li Ju thought she got up very early that day, but after looking around, she found that Chi Jinkai was already gone. He didn't know what he was doing during this period. He went out early and came back late in a mysterious manner. He looked at her with a slightly unnatural expression for several days, as if he was hiding something from her. However, Li Ju didn't pay too much attention to these. Currently, she regarded Chi Jinkai and herself as roommates and good friends, and she would not get to the bottom of things he didn't want to tell her. Each of them keeps their own exclusive space so that they won't feel offended. But there are still a few strange things. For example, Chi Jinkai prepares breakfast for her every morning these days and attaches a note with a series of small instructions, which is very considerate. This change made Li Ju feel very complicated. Because she found that she could no longer guess Chi Jinkai's thoughts. It was as if the man was suddenly covered in fog and couldn't figure it out at all. However, judging from the current situation, this change has no impact on her, so she just lets it take its course. After finishing the breakfast prepared by Chi Jinkai, Li Ju returned to the bedroom and turned on the computer. Today she had to finish the final exam paper of Imperial University. His slender, jade-like fingers were tapping rapidly on the keyboard, and half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. Li Ju blinked her sore eyes and was about to move her wrist when she heard a roar outside the window. Her body suddenly froze. People who know her well know that she likes a dark and quiet environment when she is concentrating on work, so she just closed the curtains in the room. She was so focused during the past half hour that she didn't even notice what was going on outside the window. At this time, there was another thunder in the sky, and the dull sound resounded in people's hearts. Li Ju clicked a few times on his mobile phone, and the curtains opened automatically. Several ferocious white lights flashed in the distant sky, tearing apart the dense dark clouds and chopping them down heavily. The heavy rain poured down, blurring the windows, and the white mist splashed by the raindrops obscured Li Ju's vision. She raised her eyebrows, walked to the window, and opened the window. The raindrops were blown in by the wind, hitting her cheeks finely, and wet the hair on her forehead and the thick long eyelashes. Because it is already winter, you can feel the bone-chilling chill when the raindrops fall on your face, and when the wind blows, it almost turns into ice. However, Li Ju didn't react at all. his eyes were just full of surprise. Such heavy rain is rare in winter. And it is even more rare to see it in a typical northern city like Daijing. However, it may be due to the abnormal climate in recent years that it often rains instead of snowing in winter in the north. Since the beginning of winter, there have been rainy days like this, but the first snow has never come. Li Ju doesn't have any special feelings for Chugzhou. To be honest, she doesn't understand or be interested in them at all. If that person hadn't often been nagging these annoying things in her ears, she would never have known about it. Thinking of that person, Li Ju's long black eyelashes trembled, and she lowered her eyes to hide the look in her eyes. After a while, she raised her head again to admire the rainy scene outside the window. Although it is said to be a rain scene, it actually has no ornamental value at all. The huge and heavy raindrops fell on the ground and splashed white mist, blocking people's sight. People everywhere on the street reached out and held their heads because of the sudden shower, looking around. Passers-by under cover. Li Ju gradually raised the corners of his lips, revealing a sincere smile. She likes rainy days very much, especially thunderstorms like this. The sound of thunder mixed with the sound of rain gives her a feeling of peace of mind. There was thunder outside, and Li Ju just sat by the window, supporting her head with one hand, half opening the window, and letting the raindrops fall on her shoulders. Qi Jinkai saw the scene when she came back from the company to pick up documents. Her bedroom door was not closed tightly, and the computer screen in the room was still on, but she was sitting on the balcony in a daze. With one hand with the jaw, the other hand bent down the index finger and knocked on the balcony regularly. Her hair was blown up by the wind slightly, her hair was a little messy, and her clothes on her shoulders were soaked in a large piece, but she wanted to be fine. Qi Jinkai immediately frowned fiercely, his eyes darkened, and he immediately walked forward and closed the window before Li Ju could react, pulled him up and sat him down on the bed. Li Ju was a little confused, and a question mark slowly appeared on his face. When did he come back? Just sitting there in a daze, I didn't notice him at all. Qi Jinkai took out a dry towel from the bathroom, walked up behind Li Ju with a sullen expression, and pretended to wipe her hair. Li Ju was startled and avoided subconsciously. Hey, what are you doing? Qi Jinkai stretched out his hand and pressed her shoulders forcefully, preventing her shoulders from moving. The thick and warm palm fell on his shoulder, which was the opposite extreme from the cold rain. It made Li Ju tremble and did not dare to move. The bed behind her sank. Qi Jinkai knelt behind her, carefully picked up her silky black hair with both hands, and wiped it gently. Li Ju seemed to be really shocked, whether it was because of his sudden appearance or because of his current actions. The atmosphere is a bit awkward. Li Ju coughed lightly and tried to find something to talk about. Well, why are you back? Some papers were left behind. His voice was very low, and his warm breath sprayed on her ears and neck. Along with the rustling rain and intermittent thunder outside the window, a strange feeling filled her heart. Li Ju endured it, but finally couldn't hold it back and wanted to turn around and grab the towel in his hand. I'd better do it myself. It's not that Qi Jinkai is not good at wiping, it's just that it's a little too awkward, and she never likes to be touched by others. However, Qi Jinkai didn't give her this chance. The moment she turned around, he stopped her movement and said in a calm voice, "Don't move." Whether it is tone or tone, it is undeniably strong and a proper domineering president. Li Ju. Even though the thoughts of why should I listen to you and who do you think you are arose in his heart, for no reason, Li Ju felt a little guilty when he heard his tone, so she somehow stopped resisting and let him do what he did. End of this chapter. She always loves to sleep. Author, Guy and Fei. Chapter 271. Chapter 271, Drink the Soup, Second Update. Qi Jinkai's face is now so cold that it could freeze someone to death. God knows that when he came back just now and saw Li Ju sitting there with the window open and being soaked in the rain, He wanted to strangle this woman who didn't know how to cherish her body. It's really too messy. But what followed was even more heartache. There is no other way. What else can I do after knowing that I like her? Pamper me. So he had to accept his fate and wipe the hair of this ancestor. Did you know it's easy to get sick this way? Chi Jinkai had a serious face and a lecturing tone. I wanted to say, how could you do such a stupid thing if your brain is broken, but after thinking about it for a moment, he swallowed his words. Li Ju was silent for a moment and smiled dryly. I just want to see the rain. You want to get wet in the rain. When you see the rain, then you get soaked and catch a cold. Chi Jinkai frowned, wondering how little she cared about her body. Li Ju retorted, you won't catch a cold. Well, she admitted that what she did just now was stupid, and she didn't know what happened. Maybe the rain this time reminded her of some things in the past. But she was sure that with her constitution, she would definitely not catch a cold. But when it came to Chi Jinkai, she had no way to explain, so she could only listen to the instruction in silence. Don't catch a cold, Chi Jinkai snorted, don't talk too much. Although she can usually fight with him on a draw, her body seems to shrink when she blows, so it is really not credible to say that she won't catch a cold. Li Ju. Li Ju closed his eyes and stopped talking. Seeing that she didn't speak, Chi Jinkai also fell silent and concentrated on wiping her hair. About 5 minutes later, Chi Jinkai put down the slightly wet towel, stood up and said to Li Ju, okay, go change your clothes and take a hot shower so you don't catch a cold. Li Ju laid her eyes on him and met each other. After a few seconds, she lowered her eyes and said, oh. Go to the cloakroom, take out a set of clothes, and enter the bathroom. Chi Jinkai watched her back until the bathroom door cut off his sight. He glanced at the window and exited the bedroom. Turning on the faucet, the steaming water poured down. Li Ju tilted her head back slightly, letting the water temperature warm her body from the outside to the inside. Closing her eyes, the scene of Chi Jinkai wiping her hair just now flashed in her mind. For some reason, she always felt something weird, but she couldn't tell where it was. By the way, did Chi Jinkai wipe people's hair before? Moreover, his movements were so gentle, which simply didn't fit his aloof persona. Thinking again about his caring words just now, Li Ju felt more and more that something was wrong with Chi Jinkai. However, before she could think about the result, a cup of soup was handed to her as soon as she came out of the bathroom. Li Ju looked at the steaming cup of soup and glanced at Chi Jinkai suspiciously, feeling even more that something was wrong with him. Drink it while it's hot, Chi Jing said. Li Ju pointed at the soup and asked, did you make it? He nodded. Li Ju looked at the cup of soup in silence without saying anything. Seeing her worry, Chi Jinkai said, don't worry, I followed the step-by-step instructions on the internet and drank it. It tastes okay. Li Ju became even more silent. After a long time, she raised her head, with complicated eyes, and asked with difficulty, do you have anything to ask of me? She thought that this was the only possibility. If Chi Jinkai had nothing to ask her for, how could his behavior be so abnormal, wiping his hair and drinking soup? Chi Jinkai frowned and then shook his head, not understanding why she thought so. What are you thinking about? Drink the soup quickly. Li Ju made a sound and drank the soup in one gulp. Seeing her finish the drink, Chi Jinkai looked relieved and said, don't take care of your body now. The consequences of cold air entering a girl's body will be serious. Oh. Hearing her assurance, Chi Jinkai finally felt relieved, glanced around the room, and finally landed on the computer that was still on. What are you doing? Chi Jinkai asked. Just now he was just worried that Li Ju would catch a cold and made soup for her, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Li Ju's eyes followed him and fell on the computer. He immediately stepped forward and blocked the content on the screen with his body. Then he reached out to close the computer, coughed lightly and said, it's nothing, I'm chatting with someone else. In a moment of carelessness, she actually forgot that there was this problem. If Chi Jinkai really saw the content above, her vest might not be able to hold it anymore. It has already entered winter. In order to keep warm, you must wear a vest and never take it off. Seeing that Li Ju didn't want to say anything, Chi Jinkai didn't ask any further questions. He just wanted to wait for her to take the initiative to tell him. But that day is not far away, Chi Jinkai thought. He will work hard to make Li Ju willingly tell him everything. Thinking of this, Chi Jinkai's eyes looking at Li Ju became softer and softer. As if feeling the change in his eyes, Li Ju suddenly raised her head and glanced at him. However, Chi Jinkai returned to normal in an instant, so she ignored the gentleness in that moment. Outside the window, there was wind and rain and lightning and thunder, which caused the indoor light to be very dark, adding to a cold atmosphere. If you were an ordinary person, you would feel a little chilly even if you were not scared, but the two of them looked more normal than the other, and their expressions did not even move. It was as if even if the thunder struck their ears, they would not react at all. Chi Jinkai looked at Li Ju with a flash of admiration and pride in his eyes. Look, she is indeed the person he likes. Thunder like this cannot scare her at all. Li Ju has her back turned to Chi Jinkai, so she naturally doesn't know what his eyes are thinking or what he is thinking. The only thing she cares about now is when he leaves. Real. The current atmosphere is too embarrassing. Fortunately, this embarrassment did not last long. Chi Jinkai looked at Li Ju for a while and said, "There are still things at the company, so I will leave first." As soon as these words came out, Li Ju breathed a sigh of relief subconsciously. Good. After Chi Jinkai left, Li Ju patted his face in annoyance. What's up? Why do you always feel guilty when you see Chi Jinkai recently? And there was something wrong with the way he looked at her. Li Ju felt that she could no longer be passive like this, and she wanted to find the reason herself. After thinking for a while, Li Ju suddenly realized that maybe because she bumped into him at MZ before, she unconsciously felt guilty when facing him. No. Li Ju narrowed his eyes. What is she guilty of? The vest hasn't fallen off yet, we just bumped into each other at the MZ gate. What does that mean? Even if Chi Jinkai caught her in Ji Huai's office, as long as she didn't admit it, what could he do to her? Li Ju did some mental construction for himself and decided to stay calm when facing Chi Jinkai in the future. However, how did she know that her brain circuit was completely different from Chi Jinkai's? This is comparable to cross-server chat. End of this chapter.